For your first lesson, we're going to work on your sighting, angles, and mapping skills, which we're going to refer to as your SAM skills. Have you ever seen a movie or a show that portrays an artist holding out their pencil like this, sometimes with one eye closed, angling it in different directions? What they're doing is not just for show. They're using their pencil to measure the different angles within their view. So when an artist is looking at this, they can tell that this angle is going to be the same as the angle on their paper. That's the first rule of your SAM skills. No matter how big or small an object is compared to your drawing space, the angle is going to stay the same. The other thing that they might be doing is holding their pencil completely vertically or horizontally to measure how objects are relating to each other within that space. Are they perfectly in line? Are they slightly misaligned? These artists are working in plein air, which traditionally means they're working from observation and in nature. You're going to get there eventually, but we're going to start working with a photo reference. We're going to start by training our brain with these SAM squares. First, let's look at this example. So when I'm looking at a SAM square, I'm trying to copy this drawing, this doodle, this squiggle, exactly as I see it over here. I don't want to guess. I really want to map it out and look at every tool that can help me. So for instance, if I'm looking at this kind of half curve here and this line right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the edge of the drawing plane as a fraction. I'm going to make a little mark at about the halfway point, and then I'm going to look at halfway to halfway. Now I know that this little line is not quite to that halfway point, and I can make similar lines over here. Here's halfway, here's halfway. I know that that straight line is going to start about right here. And I know the curve looks like it starts right on the right side of the halfway point over here. Now I can see that the curve is also going to bump into the side of the square over here. So let's see how far down that happens. Again, I'm looking at the side like an angle. It looks like it's about a third of the way down. So I'm going to make over here a mark at the third. And I'm going to go ahead and start connecting those two shapes. I'm going to continue on kind of mapping things out, but when you get to this little swirl in the middle, it might be a little bit harder. You don't have the edge of the picture plane to help you, but what you can do is make some connections and help out. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to draw a straight line, kind of keeping it parallel to this one. And I can see that, okay, if this is half to a half, I can make a straight line about here, and somewhere along this line, that little curly Q is going to end. So as I'm working, I want to make sure that I'm working really, really light. We don't want to start with bold lines that we can't erase later. We want to make sure that we can make changes as we go. It's not going to be perfect the first time. A big part of learning how to draw is learning how to fail. And I'm double checking right here. That looks like about a third. That looks like about a third. This line goes straight down. And then this part of the curly Q starts right here. So SAM squares are all about practice. They're not going to look like the most beautiful things in the world, but what we're doing is training our eye to see and copy shapes and to look at angles and their relationship with each other. Oh, I've made a mistake, which makes me so happy to show you. If I'm looking at this little space right here, and I know that it's going to be a little triangle, I kind of have to realize, okay, something's off. This triangle is too big compared to this one, so what could be wrong? And I think if I kind of glance my eyes back and forth, that's the best way to say, okay, what's a little bit off here? It might just be that this line needs to be a lot thicker, but I think it also needs to come in a little bit more. So I'm going to bring this line in. I'm going to thicken this line off to the side. And now this little triangle of space, this little white triangle right here, is starting to look a little bit more like the right shape. The thickness of a line is called the line weight. And you definitely want to make sure that you're trying to copy the weight as well when you're drawing, so that those angles and shapes are as accurate as they can be. And I'm just going to continue working really light. If you want to be super exact, there is a little wobbly in the line right here where it gets a little skinnier before it gets bigger. And you can see part of the line right here, but not the whole line. And remember, we discussed the curlicue end somewhere on this little mark that I made, so I know that I can come here. And I'm gonna go ahead and figure out where the bottom of this curl comes to. It's about right here. So now I know this curl is gonna kind of come up and around this way. And remember, the weight of the line matters, so I'm going to go ahead and make this line the proper weight so that when I'm looking at the space between the edge of the curl and this line right here, it looks accurate. Once I have most of the things in place, I can go through and kind of erase some of my guidelines to just clean it up a little bit. And only when you get to this point in a drawing are you really going to start pressing a little bit harder, because you can be a little bit more confident in your lines. If I got to this point now and I realized the line was off and I tried to erase, it would kind of always have that mark there. And then everything else that I just based off of that line that was wrong is going to be a little bit more messed up. So I want to keep it really, really light. That's going to be a reoccurring theme as we keep working through this class. Is keeping things really light in general until we're confident enough to make a darker line. So I feel like this square is really similar to this square here. So I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit of a darker line. This is kind of a final step. I'm also pretty confident in this area where they all intersect. You really want to resist using a ruler at this point, because the idea is that you are using this by your sight, not with a tool. So I know it would be easy right now to grab a ruler, line up that line and make sure that it's perfect and parallel, but you're not getting as much practice as you could if you just tried to do it by hand. If it's helpful too for you to actually turn your book and angle it so that your hand is really comfortable with the movement, feel free to do that. You can flip this whole thing upside down if you'd like to. Or if you're a lefty and the spiral is getting in your way, flip the book upside down. You really want the emphasis to be that it is the same, not just similar. So try to make it as exact as you can and don't be afraid to make changes. On the next page, you're going to see a series of SAM squares, and I want you to complete these on your own. What you're doing when you're working on this is you're training your brain to see these angles and objects and the relationships with each other. Right now for SAM squares, they're just kind of nonsense lines and doodles and squiggles, and it may seem like busy work, just like basketball or volleyball, just track workouts. You're working on a particular skill that you're going to apply later on when they're not just squiggles and lines anymore. When copying your SAM squares, keep in mind that your drawing should be the same, not just similar. Be a stickler. They're just nonsense shapes now, but soon you'll have to find these shapes as part of a larger drawing. So let's perfect these skills now. Finish this page and I'll see you again on page 9.